Good afternoon, everyone. It is so good to see you all here today to talk about quantum computing. Even if you don't know what quantum computing is, we're here to break it down for you. So in an hour, you will definitely be more informed than right now, I promise. So my name is Praneeth. You can call me Praneth. I am an incoming junior, which feels crazy, at Yale. I am the incoming co-president of the Yale Undergraduate Quantum Computing Club. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how students are getting involved in quantum before we turn it over to our wonderful panel of industry experts and professors here. So to give you a little bit of an idea, quantum has a special place in a lot of Yale's hearts. We ran Yale's first quantum computing hackathon this past semester. Now you might be wondering, how do you even do a hackathon in quantum computing? Well, the answer is it takes a lot of ingenuity, it takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a very dedicated group of 300 people who showed up from 32 institutions, 10 different countries. It was an incredible turnout. And honestly, I was super humbled to see the amount of people that were really into quantum. The most rewarding part of the entire weekend was not only seeing the amazing things that people built, but seeing people come in with no experience in quantum at all and coming out with actual, real, tangible solutions to impacting lives with quantum computing. And I'm super excited to hear about some of these tangible solutions today with our amazing panel. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to the Director of Emerging Technologies at Travelers, Dr. Michael Kunkel. It's a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed the panel.
Thank you, everyone. So a little bit about me. I'm Michael Kunkel. I work at Travelers Insurance in the Emerging Technologies Department, where we get to explore emerging technologies. I do have a doctorate in physics, and so they said, "Hey, who knows physics and who knows quantum computing?" And I kind of put up my hand, and they made me the guy. So I'm here. So I just want to welcome everyone to the panel on the quantum discussion and showcase. So with the advancement of quantum technology, it is expected to birth a $58 billion global market by the year 2028. Yale and the University of Connecticut are leading Connecticut down a roadmap that aspires to receive $160 million National Science Foundation grant, which is hopefully approved next year, towards a regional innovation engine in quantum technologies. In this panel, I hope to cover a range of topics with our esteemed panelists that encompasses a broad spectrum of academic and industry expertise. Our discussion will delve into the implications of quantum computing and technologies for business, the community, and future talent development, aligning with the goals of Quantum CT, the initiative to make all this accessible to everyone. I'm going to try to leave about 15 minutes towards the end of the panel for the audience questions, so please feel free to think of any inquiries that you might have as we proceed. So please join me in welcoming our panelists, Stephen Gerben, Mark Jackson down there, sorry, I have this in a different order, William Zhang, and Andrei Petrenko. To start. I would like our panelists to introduce themselves and share their insights on how they see quantum technology impacting our future. Stephen, please.
Can you hear me now? I'm Steve Gerben. I'm a theoretical physicist and also professor of applied physics at Yale, and a consultant at Quantum Circuits Inc., which is a Yale spin-out company that you'll hear about from Andre. And I've spent the last 23 years here at Yale working with my experimental colleagues, learning how to use superconducting technology to try to build quantum computers.
Thank you.
Great. Hi, I'm Will Zhang. So I got started in quantum stuff at Yale as an undergrad. I actually remember a lecture you gave in one of these survey courses that freshmen could take. It's actually about quantum money, I think, which is itself a pretty fun combination of topics because that's kind of what I do now. So I worked on superconducting circuits, learned about those while here at Yale, did my PhD in algorithms, then went out to Silicon Valley with another Yale graduate, Chad Rigetti, and helped start a company called Rigetti Computing. It was one of the first venture-backed companies building these systems. And now I do two things. So I'm a partner at a firm called Quantination. We're the major quantum technology investor globally. We've got about 170 million under management. We do early stage investing in world-changing companies from better physics. And a lot of that's quantum technologies, not just that. And then I also run a nonprofit called the Unitary Fund that I started about 5 years ago, which you can think of as sort of a Linux foundation for quantum. So any new industry, there's a bunch of things you got to build. You got to build companies, you got to build new ideas, and there's a bunch of open source and interstitial public goods things that also have to get built. And that's what Unitary Fund works on. And I'm excited to be here and answer as many questions as we can try and fit in here.
Thank you.
All right, this is working. Thank you for the invitation to be on this panel. My name is Andre Petrenko. I'm the head of product at Quantum Circuits Incorporated. We are a spinout from Yale University, full stack quantum computing company, primarily hardware focused. But we build the whole thing, all the way from the superconducting chips up to the software and the cloud services that are going to make them available to the entire world. Steve was actually on my committee or grilling me when I was getting my PhD at Yale University about 8 or 9 years ago. So I've been in the field for just about 15 years now. Started at QCI as the second employee. So it was really exciting. Rob Sholkoff was my advisor, and he was a co-founder of QCI. So he was also my boss. So it's been an amazing journey to go from grad school here at Yale to startup, and to get to get a sense of that transition from academia into industry. And Will knows all about that, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about that. Yeah, Quantum Circuits is an amazing company, and we're doing some really cool things. And I'll love to tell you all about that as the panel, proceeds. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Jackson. I'm the senior quantum evangelist at Quantinuum. Similar to the other panelists, my background is physics. I'm a theoretical physicist. Unlike the other panelists, I have no formal affiliation with Yale. I was admitted to Yale for grad school, but I chose
we can work on it.
to go somewhere else. So Quantinuum is the world's largest quantum company. We were the merger between Honeywell Quantum Solutions, which did ion trap quantum hardware, and Cambridge Quantum Computing, which developed quantum software. They merged about 2.5 years ago. We now have about 500 employees. Our headquarters are in Colorado, near Denver, with a large presence in the UK. I live in New York City. I'm the only one. But we would like to get more involved with Yale. In fact, we participated in the recent hackathon just a month ago that was mentioned, and we even did a workshop for Yale and UConn immediately afterwards. So it's great to be here.
Thank you. So let's get some questions. So Quantum CT aims to engage industry and applications in quantum technologies that will provide companies with a competitive edge. Can you discuss specific examples where businesses in Connecticut can leverage quantum computing to gain a market advantage?
Yeah, so this is a National Science Foundation grant. We're in the sort of pilot phase, and as Michael mentioned, there's a much bigger phase for which a proposal is forthcoming. And we've been working with companies in Connecticut to sort of begin exploratory partnerships. We know a little bit about what quantum computers can and can't do, but we know less about, we physicists know less about the real world problems that companies need to solve. So we've been talking to to Michael at Travelers, to folks at RTX, Research Center outside of Hartford, and developing collaborations around small versions of the optimization problems, for example, that these companies work on, so that we can think about how to build quantum algorithms to solve toy versions of real world problems, and eventually, when we have larger scale quantum computers, real world problems.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. I agree with what Steve said, but one thing that I think is worth getting at is, what are we talking about when we say quantum and tech, right? What's under this category? And Professor Gervin mentioned quantum computers, which is one thing, but there's actually a whole raft of different kinds of technologies that are related to each other that are coming out. I mean, I think it's less of an analogy with the invention of the computer in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and more like the invention of electronics, where we had sets of physics that could do a whole bunch of different things, and there were many kinds of products that came out of it. And so in the case of quantum technologies, there's quantum computers of many shapes and forms and sizes. There's analog ones, there's digital ones, there's ones that are mixed that people are building. But there are also sensing technologies that allow you to do things like precision navigation and timing, even if GPS goes down, or can be used in resource extraction to find things underground or in construction. There's also applications in RF. So there's, and then there's communications and networking applications in cybersecurity. So can we move to types of cybersecurity in our networks where we're not relying on some math problem being hard to solve, or actually where we actually just think the math problem is hard to solve but can't prove it, which is actually the state of things today, and instead move to technologies where we can say this network is secure if quantum mechanics is at least approximately accurate. And that's even better than a math proof. And there's other kinds of things in there. So one of the messages I want to give is that this isn't just quantum computers, even though quantum computers can be used for things in simulation and optimization and finance and other kinds of areas. But there's also other technologies like sensing and networks that are coming along too, and that are actually being deployed today in different places.
Sure. So just to give some background for those of you who are not PhDs in physics here, so quantum computers are not just a faster computer. They're a completely different way of calculating based on quantum physics. And it's only good for very specific problems, and we're still figuring out what those problems are. We still actually don't know the complete picture because it's so new. And so at Quantinuum, what we do is we have industrial partners. So companies come to us and they ask, could quantum help with this? And our scientists evaluate it. And sometimes the answer we think is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. And we just tell them honestly. And for the answers which we think it's yes, we develop quantum applications. So we start from scratch, we write the algorithms, we write the program, we test it on real quantum hardware and such. And so this is our bread and butter, is working on real world problems that companies are interested in right now. And we think that we will start to see advantages much sooner than you might think. Quantum technology has advanced so much in the past few years. We think that we actually, in the next few years, we will start to see an advantage.
Thank you. A follow-up to that. So what are some of the immediate and long-term challenges that businesses might face in adopting quantum technologies, and how can we overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges that industries are going to face are, at the outset, going to have to do with a certain level of learning what the technology is. There's a sense of exploration and novelty around this technology, and businesses are going to need a helping hand with this. I think, just as Mark said, coming in cold with this technology is really challenging. And so having the sense of, okay, come and explore with us, come and come in with Quantinuum, come in with quantum circuits, or whoever else you're going to choose to do your applications with, and learn with us, and make sure that you're executing these initial steps to get into the field. Don't do it by yourself. That's how you get your feet wet. That's how you prepare for this next revolution in computing. Getting over that initial hurdle so you could start programming on your own, so you could start developing those applications on your own. I think that's going to be a really key facet of, kind of unleashing this computational power going forward.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that too, that one of the challenges is it's not like there's one kind of quantum computer and you just track how that's developing and then when it's ready, you go buy it. The story of the last few years, well, actually, if I zoom out a little bit, let's set the timing here. 8 years ago-ish, to a first approximation, there were no quantum computers. A few years after that, there were some quantum computers, but that's all we could say about them. They were so bad. They're quantum computers. They're tiny, not better or anything. A few years after that, around 2019, 2020, 2021, you started to have the first quantum computers that were good enough to at least argue that they were doing something that a supercomputer couldn't. And we're kind of in that argument right now. And people, some benchmark result comes out for simulating some condensed matter system. I think Google just had another one from a few days ago. And then people with classical supercomputers try and catch up or beat it. And at some point, pretty soon, quantum computers will win for at least some esoteric cases. So that opens up the next phase, which is now we have a compute unit that is maybe not faster at everything, but it's certainly different. It's new. It's not just faster, it's new. How do we apply that in different places? And the way of making quantum computers, we've talked about superconducting circuits as one way, but there's like at least 5 or 6 or 7 really different kinds of ways of making quantum computers using light or circuits in silicon or superconducting circuits or neutral atoms. The physics is really cool, but trying to understand and track all those roadmaps is tough for companies. So maybe I'll give you one example of an approach that we think works pretty well, and I'll use a portfolio company of ours as an example. It's something called Qubit Pharmaceuticals is the name of the company. They're a drug discovery company. They were started by quantum chemists, so they know how to use quantum chemistry to analyze molecules and electronic structure and dynamics to then help to find targets for developing drugs. And today, they mostly run on GPUs, but they're starting to run on quantum computers too. And so they actually they're not waiting for quantum computers to get good enough. They have molecules that are in development today. But as quantum computers get better, they know how to fold it into their workflow, and that'll be even more of a differentiator as they go to market. And I think if you're a company like that, where you're interfacing with quantum computing things that could be quantum computing relevant today, you can get started, but not have to wait.
I'll only repeat what was said earlier, that it takes time to develop quantum expertise and such. And so often I speak to executives and such, and they say, oh, that sounds very interesting. As soon as quantum is ready, we'll get into this. I'm sorry to hear that when I hear it, because it will take about 2 years to gain the expertise, kind of the quantum muscle, if you will, because they have to understand how quantum will affect their industry. They have to hire the people. They have to figure out all sorts of things. And so I would not wait until you start to read headlines about quantum solving some problem that would have been impossible. I would encourage you to start now, and many other companies are.
Yeah, I think if you wait, the companies that are developing small quantum groups now understand that if you wait and this thing takes off and you don't have an extant group, you're not going to be able to hire anybody, because places that already have demonstrated they're committed will just be snapping up the talent.
Yeah, and I think one more point to add to something that Will was saying, there are a lot of different technologies out there, just like you said, and it's not necessarily like there's going to be one winner or loser. Each of these technologies might, in the end, be more or best suitable to different classes of applications. So companies shouldn't just sit there on their hands and wait for superconducting qubits to take over the entire space, or ions to take over the entire space, or neutral atoms, or whatnot. So I think people should be cognizant of that as well.
Thank you. So speaking about, we have quantum computers and we have quantum sensors and we have quantum networks. Quantum CTs is trying to build a robust pipeline, for new talent, so that way we can, build these opportunities, right? And so from an academic point of view, I would like to know, and also from an industry point of view, like what are some of the career paths that people can start taking now? Because as you said, we're going to need that talent. We're going to need to be able to have that workforce, because we might be on the precipice of almost like the next ChatGPT within, the next, I think you quoted at 10 years, Stephen, was it? I think that's the last time we talked.
I usually guess 10 years.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Will gave a shorter number, I think.
Our fund is 10 years.
So, what can one do? I mean, to get into this robust pipeline. How can one start preparing themselves? Like, how can we get upskilling? How can we, maybe change career paths? What are you looking for, and what's being offered?
Well, I can start. I mean, just first, this is from a research point of view, this is incredibly interdisciplinary. We need physicists, we need chemists, mechanical engineers, a lot of electronics, high-speed electronics, computer architecture. There are many, many areas in which people can contribute, and part of what we need to do in the sort of education and outreach and development of the ecosystem of trained people is, it can't be all PhD physicists. We need to get undergrads and master's students and people who, learn enough the entry to, you don't have to know all of quantum physics in order to learn how to start programming quantum computers. And I think other people can probably amplify on this.
Yeah, I mean, having tried to build a company started with just PhD physicists, I can tell you it's not a good idea.
It's tough.
Steve says is totally right on the academic side. It's really interdisciplinary. Where I did my PhD at Oxford, there were 5 departments of people doing quantum information stuff, and we had more in common with each other than with our department. In other transitions, mechanics, electromagnetism in physics, there's electrical engineering, there's mechanical engineering. There's also a discipline of quantum engineering that's emerging, but there's no departments for it. And so there's educational things, there's academic issues where things fall through the crack. And other countries have done a much better job than the US, honestly, in getting these set up. We invest globally, so we see these ecosystems. In the UK, they've had quantum engineering degrees for, I think they're on 10 years now or so in their doctoral training programs. The Netherlands is about the same, and Singapore. Australia's got the same thing. It's just been slower to get that set up here. And because the pipeline effect is really, it's a big lag between getting that set up before they enter the workforce, we've got a lot of catching up to do in terms of education at home.
So all I'll just say is go to quantumcircuits.com/careers. And just a little bit of marketing here. And you'll see that we're not just hiring PhDs. You'll see software engineers, and as Steve and Will said, mechanical engineers and so forth. There are a lot of roles, so I actually don't remember off the top of my head. But they don't require PhDs. We need a lot of different people. We have 50 people at the company, and we're going to grow a lot. And the only way we're going to succeed building a full stack company that's hardware all the way up to cloud services is by getting experts from across the industry. So I won't repeat everything that was just said, but go to our website.
So we have about 500 people at Quantinuum, about 400 of whom are scientists. And they span all the areas that were just mentioned: physics, chemistry, engineering, computer science, etc. But that means there's about 100 people who don't do that, that aren't in the research side. And that includes like lawyers, accountants, marketing, communication, evangelists. And so we really do need people from many different areas. We also have interns even. We need smart young people because they're really going to be a crucial part of this. And so that's why it's so great that there's programs like Quantum CT, and that's why we participate in hackathons and such.
Thank you. So I'm going to shift a little bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give some targeted questions I have one for each one of you because I believe there's such a breadth of experience up here and expertise that it would just encompass like maybe what we're all asking in our head. So I would like to start with you, Stephen. Given your extensive background in theoretical studies and your current focus on quantum error correction, how do you see the practical implementation of your research impacting the development of quantum computing technologies in the next decade?
Well, this is an interesting question. I mean, I have to say, as a theoretician, I never expected my work to have at least played a small role in the billions of dollars that are now being invested in this area. You know, it's still very, very early stage. So academia is the place where you can, through PhD theses and so forth, explore very high risk, completely new ideas that may fail, and companies may not be able to afford to do. Companies have to make a decision on their technology model and sort of freeze it if they're going to scale it up. But we don't want to do that too early, and we need new ideas coming all the time from basic research, and will for some time to come. So it's very exciting, however, to see ideas going out into the world and companies really trying to build something real that actually works from these ideas.
Thank you. So I'll go in order. William? Great. So as someone focused on making quantum technologies useful and accessible, what are the most critical factors in ensuring that quantum computing benefits a broad range of users?
Well, the first one is it has to actually happen. Like, we need quantum computers before we have to worry about it actually getting accessible by anybody. But I will talk a little bit about some of what we do at Unitary Fund. So Unitary Fund's a nonprofit, started about 5 years ago, started it around a microgrant program, actually. When I was at Rigetti, we decided to make some of our first processors open source, available for free, and the software to program them open sourced, which is now the trend that most of the field has followed. And it makes sense. These things are hard enough to understand when you get access to the source code and the documentation, let alone adding that other layer of obfuscation. So we started it around a microgrant program, and now it does three things. So we give microgrants for people who work on open source quantum technology. We've given about 100 to folks in more than 26 countries over the last couple of years. We do open source research internally. So we have an open source compiler, and we also do benchmarking work to try and help people track what's happening in the field in an open and transparent way. And then we do a bunch of community work. Now, we've got a hackathon running right now where open source projects that are on GitHub, we give them bounties that they put on issues. So people from around the world come in and solve those issues. And it turns out that that's a faster path to showing you can do quantum computing stuff than doing a PhD for 7 years. So there's people who find their way in the field like that. So our thesis at Unitary Fund is that making quantum technologies more open will mean that they develop faster, and they develop with more people from around the world involved in the workforce, which will then mean that we're more focused on the types of problems that the world has, not the types of problem that like one defense contractor who's funding all of the secret quantum computing stuff has, which is maybe like the alternative future.
Thank you. Andre, from your experience in a startup environment, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs looking to enter the quantum technology space?
I think the biggest piece of advice is identify a technology, an idea, a solution that provides people benefits, something that provides utility, something that you see, that you have a vision, that you think will yield something useful in this space. There are a lot of really interesting applications out there that are based and rooted in scientific ideas that are fascinating, but it's really difficult to articulate what kinds of benefits they're going to provide to investors, to potential customers, because they sound kind of esoteric. They're difficult to explain, and it's difficult to explain how this is going to make people money. And in the end, if you're going to have a successful business, you're going to have to raise funds, and you're going to have to raise funds from sometimes from people who don't understand the technology as well as you do. Hopefully you can find people who do understand the technology as well as you
Will at
do.
quantination.com.
And we've been lucky at Quantum Circuits to have investors who are, brilliant and who do have that kind of acumen. But it's a challenge sometimes to explain that. The second piece of advice I would have is an idea is maybe just a small portion of what it takes to make the product. So I'm in product, and I've seen just at Quantum Circuits how difficult it is to start from that idea and to get past it and go through the execution process to make that product viable. So when you're thinking about an idea and, hey, I want to go into a startup environment, or I want to start my own company, or I want to raise funds, think about all of the things that you have to do to make this idea, which could be amazing, into reality. And it's a lot of work. And turning that idea into a viable product is like, there's a huge hurdle to making that happen. And there's a huge amount of work and grit and energy that has to go into that. And so, I truly applaud everyone who has done that. People here on the panel, my co-founders who have done that, because it's an incredible amount of execution work that goes into that. So it's more than just the idea; it's the execution. So find a way to articulate the benefits, to articulate the value in your idea, and find a way to make sure that you can actually execute on that idea and turn it into an actual product, and be able to crystallize that in a very meaningful and easy elevator pitch so people understand it.
Thank you. Mark, as a senior quantum evangelist, what role do you see public-private partnerships playing in accelerating the adoption of quantum technologies?
Yeah, so there's an old joke that scientists are like cats. You can't tell them what to do, but you can move their food. And
I'm definitely using that, by the way.
So there's a lot of interesting things that we would like to work on, but we're kind of limited because as a private company, we have to focus on what the customer wants. And so it would be wonderful if the government and other public entities could help kind of de-risk some of these things. And they're already doing a fantastic job on for national labs. There's been a lot of grants given towards national labs, and that's wonderful. But we would also like to participate, and we have amazing things going on. And so that's one obvious way. The second thing, which is related, is that you probably have all seen this, that there's a very close connection between quantum computing and national defense, because quantum computers, it turns out, are very good at hacking a lot of types of encryption. And so right now there's a lot of restrictions on like which countries we can do business with and the citizenships that we can hire for and such. And so it would help a lot if the government would become more aware of what's happening, and so things were a little more nuanced. So that's one problem that we're having right now.
Thank you. All right, so back to questions that the entire panel could assist me in asking. Something that I think we all maybe wary of is the environmental impact of quantum technologies. There's, I think, to run a superconducting qubit lab. It's about as much as it takes energy that to run a GPU rack. Very energy extensive, but it's a sword and a shield, right? So we have to run these, but quantum computing has the potential to revolutionize the way we solve complex environmental issues. And so I'm hoping we can go down the line and we can maybe provide some examples on how your quantum technology can contribute to sustainability and environmental protection.
Yeah, sure. I'll start. So we're actually already working on projects exactly in this direction. So for example, we had a project with Total Energies, the French company, doing carbon removal from the environment. We have a project going with BMW and Airbus to produce more efficient battery technology. So we're already starting to look in this direction.
Yeah, I think in the beginning with these, with research projects, especially, and with early stage engineering projects, you're always going to have a bigger overhead. We're very much focused on scaling, of course, and so we definitely have visibility on that, and our roadmap certainly includes scaling up what's necessary to get that kind of energy overhead down, because there's no way you can build thousands, millions, billions of qubits and keep that energy consumption up. So in addition to kind of applying quantum computers to the environmental problems that we have today, we obviously need to get energy costs down.
Thank you.
When we think about what quantum computers can do, or what people want to apply them to, one of the original things is to use them to simulate quantum physics. And it's kind of funny that quantum physics applies to everything, and we've known about its rules for 100 years, but we can't design things when the quantum physics really matters, because our computers that are not quantum get stuck. Large amounts of supercomputer time today is used on simulating physics, but we're, in many cases, not very good at it. So it requires a little bit more imagination, but if I think about what the 50 or 100-year impacts of quantum computing are going to be, it's that it takes quantum matter, which applies to many things, and actually makes it something we can design. When we look at going from Kitty Hawk to the moon and to the very efficient jetliners we have today, we don't have to use wind tunnels as much as we did in the teens and 20s. We know the physics and we design it on computers. But if you want to do that for quantum systems, you're stuck today. And quantum computers are exactly designed for that. And as we get them up and running, it's going to open up a whole new realm of capabilities for us that are going to be hard to think about today.
Yeah, in that vein, you can think about, virtual screening for potential drug molecules and so forth. You can think about using quantum computers to design catalysts and other chemical reactions to cut dramatically down on energy costs for producing fertilizer or other energy-intensive chemical processes. So I think there's a lot of, if we can build large-scale, highly performing quantum computers, there's a lot of simulations we can perform of the quantum problems that you have to solve in order to design catalysts and so forth. So I think that'll be definitely relevant to the environment and to the total energy consumption in the world.
Thank you. So last question before we open up the questions, and this has to do with quantum computing and healthcare. So in what ways can quantum computing accelerate advancements in healthcare? And can we look forward to, personalized drug discovery sometime in the near future?
It won't solve all of it. It's a tool, but it's a tool where understanding molecules and simulating molecules can help early on in making drug discovery more efficient. So Qubit Pharmaceuticals is one company we have that's working on that. But there's other things in quantum sensing too. So for example, very sensitive magnetocardiography, I guess. So you can not just look at electric signals inside of a heart, but also monitor its magnetic fields to try and diagnose things more quickly without having to attach leads. There's the potential for using similar kinds of quantum sensing technologies for brain-computer interfaces. there's kind of a laundry list of different ways that sensing and computing could get involved, but they're not going to solve everything. They're a toolkit.
Yeah. No, just to elaborate on the original question. So if a pharmaceutical company wants to bring a drug to market, they can use today's computers to get kind of a vague estimate of what the promising drugs are, but that's all that it is a vague estimate. And so then they synthesize them, they do clinical trials. This takes time and it's expensive and it's risky for the people in the trials. And then the best that they could hope for is that a drug helps most people and isn't too harmful for most people. And it takes about 10 years and $1 billion to do this for one drug. And so the idea is that we could use quantum computers to more accurately hone in on the promising drugs early on. And so that speeds it up and it's less expensive and it's less risky for people. And then the ultimate goal would be, as was mentioned, personalized medicine, where you could actually design a drug for an individual based on their genetic makeup to maximally benefit them and minimize the side effects for them. And that would be impossible with normal computers.
Can I make like a side comment before we go to questions?
Yeah, please.
Which is just something that I get asked a lot, which is like, where are we in the hype here? Like there's a whole, like, we're here giving a talk about quantum, but I want to emphasize the field is really small right now. The opportunity is really big to get involved, and it's really early. It's something you see headlines on because it's really cool. And in 1994, well before anyone really had any ideas about how to build these things, it was a headline topic because it could break encryption. And so it's been a headline topic for a long time. But there's probably like 10,000 people globally really working on this, which is like how many people got fired from Twitter. And there's been about 6 billion of private venture investors. There's been about 6 billion in human history invested in private venture for quantum, which is the size of one round into Elon Musk's new AI company, which has like 25 people. So I'm not worried that we've set the expectations so high that we're not going to hit them. I'm worried, I'm not worried that we've asked for so many resources that we can't meet our expectations. I'm worried that we haven't got enough people involved and enough resources to realize the expectations and potential of this field. So that's, I think, a good framing thing about how early we really are.
Did you have anything? Nope. Okay. With that, I will open up the floor to questions. Yes.
I have a question on you mentioned encryption briefly earlier. What would be like what is a realistic forecast from a timeline perspective to render the current encryption of the internet state shot to 56 or hard key encryption break or they can render them useless and how are these protocols on the internet advancing in tandem with developments in quantum computing?
Great question. So like when is encryption going to get broken? There's a great report that comes out from the Global Risk Institute that surveys a lot of people that we know, maybe you're on the survey, which is a good aggregate statistic. And the most recent one is somewhere between 5 and 15% chance of it happening in 10 years. Now that number has also been increasing faster than the years have been increasing, if you know what I mean. Like it's been getting closer at more than 1 year per survey. And the second thing that people need to think about, especially if you're in government or trying to secure things for the long term, is store now, decrypt later. So people are hoovering up data today that they can then decrypt when a quantum computer is ready 10 years from now or maybe sooner, right? And a lot, again, like I mentioned, there was 6 billion in investment that's gone into quantum in humanities history. Like 80% of that is in the last 3 or 4 years. So the rate of change is high. You want to talk about post-quantum?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's certainly possible in the next few years that encryption could be broken from quantum. But as Will just mentioned,
I don't know about like 2 or 3, but
yeah. When I say few,
like
I mean in the next several, 10, 7, 10, whatever. But for those, you should still upgrade now if it's possible. For example, in February, Apple upgraded their iMessage encryption to include post-quantum encryption. So these are encryption algorithms that we don't think quantum computers can hack. We're not completely sure, but they seem promising. Last week, Zoom did the same thing. So this is something that's very much of concern right now. So a lot of governments and telecommunications companies and financial firms are very concerned about this, and so fortunately they are starting to take steps to protect themselves.
I think one thing to add just quickly, why are these timelines far off? Why do we say 5-10 years every couple of years? We haven't really touched on this subject that much, but quantum error correction is a huge one that a lot of companies are talking about right now. A lot of companies are putting out roadmaps that include quantum error correction. That's been a huge focus at quantum circuits ever since our inception. So before the field really gets a handle on quantum error correction and is able to scale to thousands of qubits, so-called logical qubits that are really fully error corrected, and we can execute thousands and thousands of gates, millions of gates operations, we really won't be able to break that kind of encryption. So just wanted to mention that.
In the 60s, large companies shared mainframes with time sharing. Do you see qubits as a service, as a possible transition, given the energy consumption and labor costs associated with quantum?
Yes, that's how it's happening now.
Yeah. We're going to completely recapitulate the mainframe era and probably not get out of it. In my lifetime.
No, that is how it's done. That's exactly how it's done right now. So companies or individuals, they buy time on our machine. Right now, it's very, very expensive to buy a quantum computer, and there's a lot of infrastructure needed and everything. So that's exactly how it's done most of the time now.
Sure. Yes, I'll come back over here.
Can you talk a little bit about the patenting landscape? I'm assuming that there's critical areas there because of national security and all kinds of other things. What you're seeing, what you believe should happen.
You really want me to give my opinion on patents in public? Look, you can maybe a couple comments. Number of patents in quantum technology going like this. Number of patents in China for quantum technologies going like this, and in many ways at a rate faster than here. As an investor, number of patents is like a defensive sort of thing. I guess I kind of zoom out, like this is so early that basically every company we look at has we invest in has like really differentiated IP to begin with. But another thing we know is that, like, that IP is going to be totally out of date in 3 years. So there's just so much to still develop and so much to still happen that it's almost pre-competitive in a lot of ways when it comes to the IP.
Yes.
Really interested in, obviously a lot of the focus is on the hardware engineering now, as it should be, since you can't do anything without the hardware, but at some point I presume the balance shifts to the software engineering applications, and what does that landscape look like now, and what's it going to look like in the evolution? Are the skills completely different? Are you going to be able to build a workforce of quantum software engineers? Just talk a bit about that.
Yeah. I think a lot of the value longer term is going to lie in the application space. The software infrastructure is absolutely crucial. Right now, the hardware is the pacing factor, the fact that we don't have enough qubits to, run these super valuable algorithms. But as soon as we get there with the hardware and people can really run these big applications, and we can, build these arbitrary software packages, just like the software is generating the huge margins today on classical computers. That's where longer term the value is going to lie in the quantum space, inevitably. So we have to continue developing that workforce for sure. It's not there yet, just like it's not there on the hardware side or anywhere in quantum, as Will mentioned. So we just have to keep pushing along on that. I think there's still a lot of on the application side. Unfortunately, there's probably more of a requirement for expertise in quantum, and we're going to have to get over that hurdle and make the kind of barrier to entry lower to get more people involved, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not really an expert in the upper levels of the stack, but if you look at the history of what we call classical computing, I mean, 100 years before there were actual computers, there were algorithms and crazy people thinking about if we had a machine, with gears and stuff, we could do amazing things. But after there was hardware, and young people started playing with it and figuring out why it was hard to program and inventing new ways to make it easier, and inventing heuristic algorithms that you can't prove work, but mostly work very well in solving hard problems. I think I'm putting my hope in a recapitulation of that trajectory for quantum. They're now young people. I teach a class in quantum computing, and I assign homework on machines available in the cloud. And I think young people will start to be able to build quantum heuristics, which will be very, very important for getting applications that really work well.
Hi, thanks so much for the talk. I don't know what quantum is, and honestly, I'm picturing a parabola kind of when you guys are talking. But I was wondering if there are any sci-fi examples in pop culture that you can reference to that even start to describe what we're looking at.
Are you too young for Star Trek and teleportation?
Teleportation. I don't know if you watch Marvel movies.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. No. Wait, quantum is starting to be a thing. So like the Quantumania and such. That was actually Spiros at Caltech, a friend of ours who does outreach at the Caltech group.
And now we make fun of him for everything they got wrong. But it's good.
He made some friends with some Hollywood people and. That ended up in the Marvel movies because of Spiros, and so it's good to see that. I remember I think it was Black Panther 2. There's some reference to this, they're recruiting some young genius, and she casually mentions she forgot her password, so she built a quantum computer in her dorm room to crack the university's encryption system. So I'm glad to see that it is becoming part of pop culture.
Yeah, there's more coming. I mean, Devs. I don't know if anybody saw that TV show. It's about Silicon Valley crazy person building quantum computers. It's a little close to home. I was reading a book by Kim Stanley Robertson. The main character is a quantum key distribution engineer. I was like, wow. But I can tell you my favorite recent story that kind of gets at some of these concepts. It's very sci-fi. It's by Ted Chiang. If any of you know him, he's one of the most amazing hard science fiction writers around these days. And the story is called Anxiety is the Dizziness of Freedom. And it's about a world where people have invented these ion traps that can send bits between. He works on that. They build ion traps, but can send bits between multiverses. So it's a pretty cool story. And you can't.
We don't do that yet.
Is that your Skunk Works project?
So I have a 10-year-old grandson, and when his father told him that his grandfather was working on quantum teleportation, he said, "Wow, that's going to totally destroy the business model for Uber Eats."
Yeah, this is a great panel. Thank you so much. So yesterday, the governor announced that he's committing $100 million, of which 50 could be dedicated towards quantum here in New Haven and in Connecticut. From here actually up to stores. And I think one of the questions that I'm struggling with is, yes, Yale and UConn will benefit, and yes, there'll be research going on that will be supporting with NSF dollars and NIH dollars, but as it starts to move into private sector jobs, I know QCI is here, but where do the private sector jobs materialize? And if you were advising the governor and helping us think about, where are those dollars which are precious, where should those best be applied, so that in 5-10 years we're well positioned to capture some of those jobs that might otherwise go to Illinois or Silicon Valley or China.
I have two very specific things that should happen, and I get asked this question a lot. We invest globally, so I've been talking to people about exactly this question in Canada, most of the European countries, Japan. I spent January in Australia. They're bringing a big push. what should we do with some money we have to kickstart an ecosystem? There's two types of things that should get built. I mean, there's basic research, all that stuff. Two new things that don't really exist in many places. The first is what we call an application center. So this is somewhere where you procure state-of-the-art quantum computing technologies and make them available to people to use, people who are in academia and people who are in industry. Because buying these machines is expensive, and if you want to incentivize folks to find applications, then you want to get some discounted access. And that also starts to build a hub. And you can bring in partners, venture partners like us, you can bring in suppliers that are the startups, you can bring in the end users, all around a center with different kinds of computing technologies. So that's one, an application center. The second is like a quantum technology venture studio. So these, you mentioned this in your advice, Andre, often the people who are starting these companies, and this was my background too, they've been academics, they didn't have a real job, they're trying to figure out how to take their hammer looking for a nail. So they need a little bit more time to get to something that looks like a venture business. But it's not lab work, it's sort of project work, initial team formation, that kind of stuff. And if they can do that with shared facilities and perhaps access to quantum computers and other technology in the application center, then you get a cohort of people working together that are greater than the sum of their parts. And we've launched one of these in Sherbrooke, we're launching one in France, we've launched one in Rome. There's not one in the US yet. Both Chicago and Colorado want to do it, but they haven't done it yet. There's definitely space to become a leader here. So those are two things that you could build that would, nobody's done it yet, but you get it done here faster. You'll be there first.
Yeah, just one other point here. I think those are great ideas. A big part of this to me is also perception factor. How do you get companies like AWS, NVIDIA, others to notice New Haven, notice Connecticut? How do you attract world-class talent to the state? I don't have all the answers, but you have Yale University, you have QCI, you have UConn, you have a lot of really great institutions here. And so using the kind of resources that, the government, the governor are allocating, use those resources to attract those kinds of companies, those kinds of brands, so people start viewing Yale and the other institutions around here more than just research institutions, but more like the Silicon Valley of the East Coast. And then you're going to start building that momentum because that's how you're really going to build on that talent pool that already exists.
I just want to grab this last question.
Great. Thank you. So in the 50s, computers were the size of a room, right? But with the invention of transistors followed by microprocessors, we ended up with powerful edge devices in our pockets. Do you foresee quantum computers ever shrinking? What kind of scientific barriers stand in the way? What breakthroughs need to happen? Or will harnessing quantum computers at the edge always be at the mercy of a network device?
Yeah, so right now ours is the size of a room, but we've already published a roadmap that we expect it to be put on a chip in 10 years. Using our technology, that's one of the advantages, is that it will be on an integrated chip and scalable within about 10 years or so. So absolutely, and there's approaches like photonic, which from day one it's on a chip. That's how it's done. It's fabricated on a chip. So absolutely. Don't throw away your current laptops, though. Quantum will never replace traditional computing. It will augment it. Again, quantum is only good for specific things. So yeah.
Yeah, I think another part of it is also use case. There's a very obvious use case for having a smartphone, but whether we need a quantum computer in our pockets is a different question. So we'll see when we get there. Right now, we don't.
Okay, we are at time. And so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if you have questions, maybe meet them out on the den. And with that being said, we thank everyone for showing up. We thank the panelists. Thank you so much, everyone.